Hello, I'm Dr. Bunn. Why have you come to see me? Oh. Doctor, one-time associate professor, James Edward Gunton, Bunn, MBBS, MSc, DCH, DTM&H, FRC, PCH, MRCP. I'm lead for child health in Sierra Leone, working with WHO. That job has expanded rather a lot, and I also look after what's called case management for emergencies. So if there's an emergency or a potential emergency, for example, Ebola or measles, cholera, a mudslide, COVID, I get pulled in to help from the clinical aspects of how to manage cases and give advice to government on that. I trained as a doctor, having initially failed my A-levels and resat them. So I then had some resits through my medical degree, namely anatomy, which was embarrassing because my father did a BSc in anatomy, so not the subject which was most likely to be challenging. I then went to India to do an elective, as I'd always interested in international work, seeing medicine very much as a vocation, and through my Christian faith had always anticipated that would work abroad, and that was a good start, seeing medicine in India. I then qualified and did my one-year house jobs, 6 months of accident and emergency, and a friend of mine, not a Christian, but got a post in a hospital in Kenya, and he went with the Methodist Church, and I followed the same route he took and applied to go with the Methodist Church for a short placement, 6 months, to cover somebody who was on furlough in the UK, and that took me to Sierra Leone. I was offered posts in Sierra Leone or Lesotho. Lesotho would have been better if I could ride a horse, because many of the clinics needed to be visited by horse, and I decided Sierra Leone. So I went to Sierra Leone for 6 months. It was a post which made me think very differently about medicine, very much more in a public health awareness. You realise that most deaths can be prevented, and many of those can be prevented easily. I worked for 6 months there, came back to a master's degree in nutrition. I'd always wanted to do nutrition, and nutrition, infectious diseases, and as it happened, pediatrics fit very well together. Those are the main three elements of children's health: their nutrition, their risks of infection, and their age. So I went from my master's to a training in paediatrics in London, University College Hospital, where I worked on the same unit my brother had been ventilated as one of the first ventilated babies in the UK in the early 1970s. And that was interesting, working with people who had known him and my parents from 30 years earlier. I went from there to a registrar rotation in York and Leeds, where I saw a job. Somebody must have told me that there was a job coming up with the Medical Research Council on nutrition in the Gambia, and I applied for that. Across that time, I met Mary, my wife, and she was working briefly at that time in St. Lucia, so visited there. And just before I took this post with the Medical Research Council on paediatrics and nutrition in the Gambia, we got married, and travelled there for the next 2 to 3 years, where we lived in a small village in a very isolated community, and our first child was born out there. We came back to the UK to complete paediatric training in Newcastle, and then we went to South Africa at the end of my paediatric training, and while I was in South Africa in Cape Town working at Red Cross Children's Hospital, I was appointed to a post in Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, initially as a lecturer, then as a senior lecturer, and doing clinical work at the Children's Hospital in Liverpool, Alderhay Children's Hospital, and worked on HIV, infectious diseases there for part of that time. In 2005, I felt that I hadn't had enough experience working in the tropics and to teach, and I was teaching at that time a course on tropical paediatrics and research methods. I've been in the UK for 7 years. Although doing projects abroad, I felt that you needed to be clinically working in a tropical environment to be relevant, to keep up to date. And so we left that post to go and work in Malawi, and took by then 4 kids with us to a post as associate professor in community health, although I took a full paediatric on-call commitment and managed the paediatric malnutrition unit there. And we were there for almost 4 years, and came back partly because our oldest was coming up for his GCSE exams and wanted to do subjects which would be difficult to complete in Malawi. So we came back to posts in Alderhay Children's Hospital again. I'd been working there previously. I was known there, and they gave me a locum post to come back to, and after I think almost 2 years that converted to a permanent post, and I was there as a paediatrician, general paediatrician, but with an interest in infections and nutrition, and also became the training program director for all the paediatric trainees in Merseyside and part of the northwest of England, about 137 trainees. And so I'd moved to medical education more then, and did that for 7 years. And somebody then sent an email, I can't remember who, saying there was a post coming up in Sierra Leone. I'd always known that I wanted to go back to Sierra Leone towards the end of my career when our children were old enough, and travelled there with Mary, my wife, with our youngest finishing his A-levels in the UK while we were in Sierra Leone. So I moved to a post with WHO, and I've been there for the last 5 years. I've always seen international health, international child health, as where I was expecting to work, and apart from periods when we were working back in the UK, either for completing training or for children coming through secondary schooling, we've worked abroad for most of our career, and probably will continue doing so. As I come up towards retirement, my expectation is that Mary and I will continue links to Sierra Leone, teaching and hopefully contributing to health there into the medium term. I think I'd always thought I would be a doctor. I saw it as vocational, not a job, but something which you commit to, and very much a part of my faith. I'd seen medicine as the expression of the work I would do as a doctor who's a Christian. Working internationally was part of that, and I think I've been very fortunate to have posts which have been fulfilling. Many people said it's career suicide to go abroad when I first went abroad, and each time you go there are reasons why one might want to stay in England, and many people share those reasons with you, and we've been confident, both Mary and myself, that this is where the Lord's wanted us, and each time doors have opened or at times been closed, and so we've moved where the doors open. It's interesting, I suppose I've reinvented my career in sort of 7-year periods, a period around nutrition, a period around pediatrics, then training in pediatric infectious diseases and immunology, then working in Malawi in nutrition again and higher education, coming back to the UK, general pediatrics, postgraduate training programs for paediatricians, and now more public health. So yes, my career has moved, and I think it's stimulating to have new challenges every probably 5 to 7 years.
Last thing I want to get this to do is I want to write me a sick note.
I can't write you a sick note.
It won't be used.
No, I'm not registered.
Not registered?
No, I'm not licensed to work in the UK.
Well, write me what would be a sick note, if you could write a sick note. You get to decide what have you written for me.
I, Dr. James Bunn, certified Joshua Min as being unfit to work due to medical illness.
I like that, I like that. If they question me, I don't have to say anything.
Mm.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Bunn.
Good. Thank you.